Assalamu alaikum. I am Mr. Hussain, meal expert at Premier Mountain Communities Consultants, better known as PMCC, up here in Gilgit-Baltistan. Welcome to today's learning session. Today, we're diving into a massive paradigm shift in our field, behavioral economics in meal. We're going to unpack exactly how understanding real human psychology can completely revolutionize the way you design your programs, making them way more effective and, honestly, a lot more sustainable. Let's get right into it.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start by looking at the behavioral economics shift itself. Then we'll cover 3 core behavioral theories. After that, we'll identify barriers and motivators, move on to designing behavioral interventions, and finally look at some real-world MEAL applications.
All right, Section 1, the behavioral economics shift. We are moving away from those traditional, purely rational models of human behavior.
You see, traditional meal kind of operates on this assumption that people act completely rationally all the time. It assumes that if we just give people the right information, they'll automatically change their behavior. But, well, we all know that's not always how humans work, right? Behavioral meal recognizes what we call bounded rationality. It accepts that our decisions are deeply influenced by our cognitive biases and our environment. So instead of just pushing facts, it uses tools like nudges and framing to actually drive that change and boost evidence-based decision-making.
Moving on to Section 2, 3 core behavioral theories. To actually use this new mindset, we really need to understand these 3 foundational theories.
First up is the dual system theory. Think of it as thinking fast and slow. System 1 is our fast, automatic, and intuitive brain, like instantly dodging a pothole in the road. System 2, on the other hand, is slow, deliberate, and analytical, like trying to solve a complex math problem. The tricky part for meal is that our communication strategies usually target that analytical System 2, but our beneficiaries are out there making everyday choices using their intuitive System 1, so our tools absolutely have to account for both.
Next is prospect theory, which brings us to a super fascinating concept called loss aversion. Basically, this is the psychological principle where people strongly prefer avoiding a loss over acquiring an equivalent gain. Put simply, the fear of losing something you already have hits you way harder than the joy of getting something new. Think about it. This perfectly explains why a farming community might resist adopting new agricultural practices. They fear losing their current guaranteed crop yield much more than they value the potential of extra gains in the future.
Looking at this graph, you can visually see how the pain of a loss drops down much steeper than the joy of an equivalent gain rises up. People evaluate their outcomes based on a central reference point, not in absolute terms. Realizing this should completely change how we frame our evaluation questions. We really have to monitor changes relative to what the beneficiaries consider their starting point or their reference point.
And finally, we have nudge theory. A nudge is essentially a small, subtle change in the environment that leads to a significant shift in behavior. And here's the kicker, without forcing anyone's hand or taking away their freedom of choice. It's just about designing choices in a way that influences behavior in predictable, positive directions. By weaving these nudges into our work, we can drastically improve beneficiary participation and encourage long-term behavior change across all our development programs.
Which brings us to Section 3, identifying barriers and motivators. So, knowing these theories, how do we systematically figure out what's stopping or driving the people in our programs?
Well, we do it by applying these behavioral insights directly to how we collect data and design our surveys. It's a 3-step process. Step 1 is using focus groups to really explore attitudes and perceptions, like figuring out exactly why a community is pushing back against a specific health practice. Step 2 uses in-depth interviews to pinpoint individual motivators. For example, what specifically encourages a mother to feed her children more nutritious foods? Then, Step 3 uses structured surveys to gather quantitative data on how often these behaviors are actually happening. The big takeaway here, when we upgrade our survey design to actively look for these behavioral barriers, we get a much truer picture of real human behavior.
All right, Section 4, designing behavioral interventions. Now that we know our barriers, we can start designing strategies that speak directly to human psychology.
There are 4 powerful core interventions we can deploy right into our meal frameworks. First, nudges, which are those subtle environmental tweaks we just talked about. Second, defaults, which make the most beneficial choice the automatic one. Third, framing, where you carefully present information to highlight either gains or losses. And fourth, social norms, leveraging the immense pressure and influence of peer behavior. These 4 tools are absolutely essential for designing effective behavior change interventions in literally any sector.
Let's look at a practical nudge in action. Check this out. Simply placing dark green leafy vegetables front and center in a market display or arranging them beautifully on a plate makes people significantly more likely to actually buy and eat them. Whether you're working in health, agriculture, or community development, this right here is a perfect, low-cost behavioral nudge. It respects the person's freedom of choice, but it actively promotes better nutritional outcomes. Win-win.
Another highly effective intervention is the default option. Basically, it's the path of least resistance. A great example of this, especially for gender and livelihoods programs, is making nutrient-rich vegetables the default option that women receive in food distribution programs. Now, they can always opt out if they want to, but by making it the automatic preset choice, you're ensuring dietary diversity and improving program outcomes, all without requiring any extra effort or thought from the beneficiary. It's a real game changer.
We can also counteract something behavioral economists call present bias. That's our very human tendency to prioritize immediate rewards over future benefits. How do we beat it? Simple. Timely reminders. Just sending an SMS message to a household to remind them about an upcoming market day for fresh produce can drastically improve food security. These timely prompts are also incredibly effective in climate change and environmental conservation programs, reminding communities to stick to sustainable practices right at the exact moment it matters most.
And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Real-World Meal Applications. Let's connect all of these psychological tools directly to cross-sector meal systems and learning agendas. It's amazing because these behavioral insights are yielding incredible results globally, especially across developing countries. In the health sector, simple text reminders are bumping up vaccination rates. Over in education, setting default enrollment is boosting school attendance. In agriculture, making sustainable practices the default is protecting the environment. And for financial inclusion, automatic enrollment is completely transforming community savings. It just proves that understanding human psychology is vital across every single development sector.
But to truly integrate this, organizations have to embed behavioral economics directly into their results-based management and performance monitoring frameworks. What does that look like? It means setting up specific behavioral indicators, figuring out exactly which behaviors you need to monitor, and then using rigorous impact evaluations, like randomized controlled trials, or RCTs, to measure the true impact. Doing this doesn't just strengthen your meal systems, it ensures that real evidence-based decision-making is driving your project's long-term sustainability.
As we wrap up this learning session, I want to leave you with a challenge. How will you experiment with these behavioral insights? How will you shift from just assuming people are rational actors to actually understanding real human behavior in your very next project? Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope this explainer empowers you to strengthen your MEL systems. Please, don't forget to like this explainer, share it with your colleagues, subscribe to the PMCC YouTube channel, and click that notification bell so you never miss our future tutorials on monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. Until next time, keep learning and keep making a real impact.